Hello friends, welcome. I'm Savalian, Sava, Alyssa, any of these names work, and I am a software dev and creative. Today I'm going to talk about the 12-week year. I have been following a kind of like home-brewed version of the 12-week year for now I'm going on 7 weeks. So I've completed 6 weeks. I've completed half of the 12-week year, and I wanted to talk about how it was going. So I started with the 12-week year system at the beginning of 2022. So I started on January 1st, and the way that I did it, I didn't follow the book exactly. I actually recently reread the book. I had initially read it years ago and was just kind of going off of what I remembered of it. And so I reread it very recently, and I may use some of that reading to change my system a little bit. But for the sake of this video, basically what I've been doing was I set a number of goals for the first 12 weeks, and each week I've been planning out what I want to get done that week in order to support these goals for the 12 weeks. And I started this method, this system, as a way to be more intentional about what I was doing, target what the outcomes that I want and what I think will get me there, rather than just sort of, I don't know. I've tried a lot of goal setting systems, a lot of planning systems, and I wanted something a little bit more data driven. Something measurable. So a big part of the 12-week year is that you do set sort of numeric tasks for each week, and then you score yourself at the end based on how much of those tasks you actually did. So you'll see as I go through everything kind of how that process evolved for me, but that's kind of the gist of the system in general. So my actual goals for the first quarter, I've listed them all out on my monitor here. I'm going to read them off to you. If you watched my year planning videos, my setup for the new year, you may already know about these, but I'll just read them off so everyone kind of knows what we're dealing with. So I wanted to lower sugar intake for my health to less than 40 grams per day, establish a strength training routine, update my Twitch emotes, and these actually are not in order. I don't know why these aren't in order. I do have priorities set for these, but for some reason I did not put this list in that order. So update my Twitch emotes as a way to sort of foster community and fun on my Twitch channel, build a medium following to maintain my status in the partner program, improve my game I'm working on, improve the test coverage to 90%, create sounds and music for my game. I've run out of fingers to count on. Develop the game's user interface, increase the performance and stability of my game, which is similar to like the testing goal but a little bit different. Build up my website presence. The idea was that I would start blogging regularly, but that goal is kind of open to interpretation. Increase my Skillshare income, reduce my yarn stash as a sort of minimalist goal. And the last one is to improve YouTube engagement by creating videos that hopefully people enjoy and find useful. So this is a lot of different goals, and it's spread out a lot. I know I have had issues focusing my efforts, and I think this is a step in the opposite direction for focusing, but it is 12 weeks. It's a big chunk of time, and I have sort of weighed each of these goals and decided that they were worth committing to during this first 12-week stretch. And if I get to the end of this 12 weeks and I think like this thing I'm trying to do is I'm not getting anything out of it, it hasn't improved my life or my efforts in any way, at that point I may decide to drop some of these. But for now, this is the set of goals. It seems like a lot, and it probably is a lot. I'm aiming high, so I'm going to flip us around. We're going to look at my notebook spreads for each of these weeks. I have been planning sort of hybrid across Notion and my bullet journal, but my bullet journal has these nice tidy little sections where I've marked off like my progress each day. So I think that's going to be a little bit more interesting than looking at the Notion pages. So here we go. So for week 1, because I feel strongly that weeks should start on Monday and end on Sunday, I've actually included January 1st through 9th, so I wouldn't have this weird partial short week. And the first week of this planning system, I was still figuring out what worked. I set some pretty rigid knitting goals, like to do a certain number of blocks for this blanket I'm working on, to create 8 new emote sketches, do game dev for 5 hours, and then the sugar intake goal, complete a UI course and come up with 8 outlines for Medium articles. A lot of stuff here. And one thing I really figured out was having a weekly goal to like finish a unit of work that may take a different amount of time than I expect is not a good strategy. So like knitting these squares took a lot longer than the 20 minutes I had sort of allotted to each one. So a big thing for moving forward from this week that I wanted to do is focus on smaller increments for these goals that are a little bit more doable day by day, and also focus on time. So like instead of trying to get 4 of these blocks done, just focus on working for like X amount of sessions or X amount of hours, and make sure that those numbers of hours add up to something that is actually possible for me with the full-time job and with keeping the house like clean and updated. And I don't know why I said updated. Keeping the house clean, animals fed, all that. Now I did still have that like fiery New Year energy, so I actually did get a lot of this done. My score for this first week was 82%. The 12-week yearbook recommends shooting for 85%, but we'll see pretty quickly that executing on these goals is actually it has a bit of a learning curve. Week 2. Lots of individual goals on this one. You can see I have split out my game dev work into all these different individual tasks. I didn't meet my test coverage goal, so I just included the next one, which is not a good strategy. And I haven't quite figured out yet how to plan things in a way that is doable and sort of bite-sized. I have very high expectations for this week, and splitting out the tasks like this, not a good idea for me. Maybe it might work for someone else, but for me it just ended up overwhelming me a bit. I didn't get most of it done, which made me feel bad about my score, which I'm trying really hard not to let those sorts of feelings get in. Like, I'm focusing on this as a learning experience, as a measure of growth, and a measure of effort. So each week I'm sort of refining how I'm picking these goals and how I'm wording them to focus on effort and growth. And because of how I split things out, my score for week 2 was 54%. Okay, week 3. Did I learn my lesson? Kind of. I did manage to mostly keep things time-bound on this one, but I set the time boxes pretty high. So like I have 8 hours of game dev work and 2 hours of testing work and 4 hours of music work, and that's a lot. That's a lot, and that's on top of everything else. That's just for coding. So this week I did better in sort of how I'm defining goals, but I did still make them a little bit too ambitious. And it's hard to find a balance because you want to be ambitious enough that you are stretching a little bit to sort of reach, the book talks a lot about potential. Like, the idea of this is to do the things that you have the potential to do, not to force yourself to overextend. And in order to find your potential, you do have to challenge yourself a little bit. My score for this week was 76%, so not quite the 85. That is the goal set aside by the book, but much better than 54, and definitely trending in a good direction. Okay, week 4, I changed the style up a little bit. I just think this, like using the tombos here and then the paint pens, it just looks so cute. I really, really like how this came out. So in week 4, I worked really hard to keep my expectations reasonable. You can see everything here is based on time. It's all, I mean, there is a good number of tasks, but they are mostly in the top priority software section here. Now my score for week 4 was 98%. I did fairly well on this one. And I know like the book sort of recommends if you're hitting all your goals every week, you can probably set your sights higher and get a little bit more out of yourself, but I tend to be a little bit more cautious on that just because I know how my emotions sort of follow scores like these, and I just think if I'm missing a lot every week, it's just going to wear me down. So I'm still sort of figuring out how I want to balance that for myself. All right, week 5. This was a rough week for me. The big struggle was that I started on a pretty significant refactor of my game code, which basically just means like re-architecting, moving things around in a big way that usually causes like a ripple effect where other things get a little bit messed up and you have to fix it. And I thought that I would be able to do this big refactor and also do some feature work and UI work, and I started working on designing a new game to make with my partner in addition to the game I'm making on my own. And so I did too much. I scheduled too much for this week, and also my day job was pretty intense during this week, and so that took away a bit of my energy as well. And now that I'm thinking back on it, I think week 5 is when I started struggling to sleep at night, and it just wrecks you, you know? Sleep is so important. I'm still really trying to get my sleep back on schedule, but it's a weakness, you know? I'm doing my best. My score for week 5, all things considered, was 61%, which honestly could have been worse. Okay, finally, we're at week 6. So this marks the halfway point of the 12-week year. I was a lot more careful about keeping my expectations realistic. I also had a pretty busy work week that I didn't quite expect it to be so busy. There was a hackathon at my work, which basically just means sort of frantic experimentation with code. So like you get a little bit of time off of your regular work to explore new ideas. And I had some good ideas and I worked really hard on them. And it was a lot. It was a lot of energy sort of spent on the hackathon that I didn't have after work because I spent it all during the workday. I also started getting into music creation for my game. I'm very bad at it. Like, it's really not a skill that I have. Even though I have played piano for years. I'm out of practice at the moment, but I played for years as a child, and I've taken multiple music theory courses. Still not very good at composing music, but I'm learning. It's just the practicing is kind of emotionally draining because I don't think I'm unusual in this, but I hate being bad at things, and this is something that I like. You really just need to put a lot of practice in. And it's very hard for me to motivate myself to do that practice when everything I make is so bad. But I'm hanging in there. It's good to do things that are outside your comfort zone, and I have been pushing through. And one thing I took seriously was making sure that these goals were focused on, you know, the effort of learning and not like make a song or to compose 3 melodies or like anything like that. I may not be able to commit to at my current skill level. So all these goals are really focused on the learning aspect of what I'm doing. My score for week 6 was 73%. Okay, we're back to face cam. So we went through all 6 weeks of my 12-week year, and Notion very kindly calculates the average for me for over these 6 weeks, and my average was about 74%, and I feel pretty good about that. I'm actually kind of surprised. I think that 198% week really did me a lot of favors. 74% is obviously not the 85% that Brian Moran recommends, but I feel good about it. I feel like, especially first half of the first 12-week period, I feel like this is a good start. It's hard to really stick to anything for 12 weeks. 6 weeks, a little easier. It's still pretty hard to stick to something, consistently, making the time to plan out each week, making the time to review and score and make sure I'm tracking all of this progress. It's hard, and I feel really good about doing it consistently for 6 weeks and doing my actual tasks with 74% completion rate. I feel really good about that. So, the conclusion. What did I learn? And basically what I recommend a 12-week year. I'll just start off saying, yes, I do feel like having the system in place with very clear guidelines for how to structure each goal, and you have times where you check in on each goal, that's fantastic for me. I think it would be fantastic for a lot of people because it makes you think about what you're doing each day. I have these, I just showed them, but I have these empty squares here, and every day I look at this page in my notebook and I think, first I look at highest priority. I think, is there any of this that I can do today that will either check it off completely or, make the progress I need to get this done by the end of the week? And I can see at a glance what needs to get done. And I really like that. I find that type of clarity to be very important to my planning, and I would recommend it. And then the scoring is a nice loop. It creates a nice loop where you think either it worked and you got your thing done, and maybe you can even push it up a little bit, or it didn't work and you need to, move some things down or take some things off. It's a loop you can come back to every week and just slowly get a little bit better, a little bit more efficient, maybe a little bit more focused on, your end goal. Maybe you're realizing that the tasks you're doing are not actually helping, or it's busy work, or, something like that. In the official process, you're really supposed to figure out the most important tasks you can do beforehand, but for me, it is sort of an iterative process that I'm still going through. Another thing I learned is that just having the score motivates me to do the work, which you would think that I would be able to remember why I want to do certain things and what the value is going to be from doing them. When I need to make a YouTube video, for example, I might think, oh, I want to do that because the people watching my channel will enjoy it and it'll make them happy, and it will increase maybe the reach of my channel or the engagement. All of these things are true, but it's when I look at a task on a list, my brain doesn't go to that. It doesn't extend onward to the consequences of deciding to do that work or not, but it does know very easily, if I don't do this, I can't check it off and my score is going to be lower. So, it's simple. It's kind of like Pavlovian, just keeping score. What gets measured gets managed. Is that the saying? I don't know who said that, but it is right. It is correct. If you add a score onto something in your brain, it turns it into a game. It turns it into something that you can improve or optimize, and it works. So that's all I can say about that. Another thing I learned, and this might be the most important thing, is that when you really focus on the process rather than the results of that process, so again, it's that difference between lead indicators and lag indicators, which I've I've talked about, I've written about it, became clear to me how these things are important. But basically, if you focus on getting the pieces done that you need, it does create results, even if you aren't watching them happen in real time. So like, for example, I have been doing 2 strength workouts a week and watching my sugar intake and logging like the sugar I'm eating, making sure I keep that under 40 grams a day. And even though week to week, the difference in sort of my energy, my mood, my weight, my overall feeling, I can't feel a difference. I can't tell that there's a change happening, but I have lost 5 pounds. My resting heart rate has lowered, which is a thing that happens every time I quit eating sugar, and it's so drastic that I'm like, wow, obviously this is better for my health, but because it takes a while for the effects to kick in, I never see it. And one thing that's sticking to these little sort of weekly and daily tasks is that you actually create change with these little tasks. Like it's effective, it works. And I think it's really hard to know how that's gonna feel before you start, because we have this tendency to believe that in order to create big changes, we need to do big things. And that's not usually how it works. Like, obviously, people get lucky, people, strike metaphorical gold. But most of the changes that most people are going to see in their lives are from these little pieces all stacking up. And so that's, I think, the biggest thing that I've learned from committing to this 12-week year. And that's just 6 weeks. I've got another 6 weeks coming up to finish out this 12-week year. That's going to be all for this video. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to be notified when I post the big 12 weeks review and sort of the, I plan to keep going with another 12-week year after this one. But of course, I'll decide when I get there. So subscribe if you want to get that video. I've been trying to increase my publishing schedule here just a little bit. Nothing that's going to overwhelm me, but after my 30 days of posting, or 31 days, I guess, of posting in December, I've just been wanting to experiment a lot more with different types of videos. So I will be back soon with another video. Could be anything. So subscribe if you want to be here to figure out what it is. But I hope you found this video useful. I'll see you next time. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye, 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 bye.